Hey, it's Tamie M here of TamieMCoaching.com, empowerment life coach and creator of the Freedom Class. And what I want to talk to you about today is how to respond to narcissistic hoovering. Now, before I begin this video, I just want to quickly announce that we have a few spots available in the calendar this week for the free one-to-one consult with either myself or a member of my team for the Freedom Class program. So if that's of interest to you, be sure to stick around till the end of the video for the announcement on how to enroll and sign up for that consult. And with that, let's get started. So let's talk about how to respond to narcissistic hoovering. But first of all, if you're tuning into this video, you've likely been through the abuse cycle at least once, if not multiple times. Meaning, the relationship cycle that's typical of narcissistic abuse generally follows a pattern that actually includes 3 stages. Starting off with idealization, then moving into devaluation, where it starts to get awkward, confusing, uncomfortable, etc. And then ultimately the discard, right? Painful, to say the least. So with that said, this is what is considered to be narcissistic hoovering. Whether you were actually discarded by the narcissist, and this can be in any relationship with someone who lands on the spectrum of destructive narcissism, by the way, whether that is a romantic partner, a spouse who leaves you for someone else, a family member, a sibling, a parent, a friend. This can happen in any area of our lives, but fundamentally what the hoovering boils down to is whether you were discarded by them or you finally got to a point where you had had enough, you couldn't take any more of the pain, the chaos, the drama, and the trauma of it all, and you decided to break free, break away, extricate yourself from the toxic and dysfunctional dynamic and go either real no contact or low contact. Either way, what hoovering boils down to is sooner or later, you can count on the fact that a destructive narcissist is going to circle back around and do and say whatever they think it might take in order to suck you back into the abuse cycle, right? Now, this may very well include love bombing. Fundamentally, they know if they've spent any time with us, what it is that we would need to hear in order for them to be convincing enough and win us back or win us over, right? So they'll fully be willing to do and say often whatever it takes to suck you back into the toxic, dysfunctional dynamic so that you're now once again cycling through that abuse cycle with them. And sometimes this can happen very quickly when, after we've been discarded by a destructive narcissist or we're the one that has done the discarding for whatever reason. Sometimes that can happen inside of a few short days or a few short weeks, but I can tell you, I've experienced all manner of hoovering and, before recovery would fully get sucked back in. And that would happen sometimes with family members, sometimes in my romantic life, sometimes with some real narcissistic friends, right? So there would be a period of separation. And, in my opinion, when they are running out of whatever source of supply they've been living off of in your absence, that energetic, emotional, that luge, for want of a better word, right? That energetic and emotional source of narcissistic supply, when whatever source they've been living off of in your absence disappears, runs dry, has enough, runs the cycle of devaluation and discard, and they find themselves empty-handed in terms of a new source of supply, they will circle back. So again, sometimes that'll be in real short order. And in my experience, sometimes that's even after years and years have passed. It's fascinating how these people can operate in terms of reaching out after a number of years. I had one instance where an individual reached out to me via email after 10 years of no contact with the most slimy, manipulative, awful, emotionally manipulative email one can imagine. Fortunately for me at that time, I was well into my recovery journey and I could see it for what it was. But there was a time where that's all it would have taken to pull me back in. So again, fundamentally, what it boils down to is once there's been a period of separation for whatever reason, one way or another, the narcissist will circle back with attempts to suck you back into the dysfunctional, toxic dynamic so that you can start that abuse cycle. You can run through that abuse cycle with them all over again. And this is why when we look at, really dysfunctional relationship dynamics, we can often see it real well when we're on the outside looking in, right? But we'll see people break up, get back together, break up, get back together, break up, get back together. I watched my father and my stepmother do that for 18 solid years, much to the detriment of my 3 younger brothers. It was this constant, perpetual cycle of idealization, devalue, discard. And they both played the game. Neither were a victim in that. They were both playing that game and they both did their fair share of hoovering over the years, right? So this is a pattern that operates subconsciously when we are susceptible to narcissistic abuse. And it's our job to do the healing and recovery work necessary so that we no longer get sucked into this very painful, very destructive cycle. Now, if we haven't begun our own personal healing and recovery work, if we aren't on that path, we're going to be especially vulnerable to being hoovered. And the reason for that is our tendency is going to be to slip into what I refer to as codependent amnesia, otherwise known as abuse amnesia, which makes us very vulnerable to being emotionally manipulated by someone who lands on the spectrum of destructive narcissism. Okay, so it's perfectly normal that that would be our tendency, again, if we haven't begun our own healing and recovery work, not least of which because there is a wounded inner child inside of us. Okay, so that's what, not entirely, but a lot to do with our healing and recovery work from codependency and narcissistic abuse specifically has to do with healing and recovery specific to our wounded inner child. And if we haven't begun that work, 95% of the game of life is subconscious, which is where our wounded child resides. And that aspect of us, that tender, precious, vulnerable aspect of us is still driving the bus of our life. And that tender, precious, vulnerable aspect of us, more often than not, prior to healing and recovery, is desperately wanting, needing, seeking for approval, validation, acceptance, security, love, safety, all the good things, right, that many of us did not experience with consistent, reliable predictability in the first 5 to 7 years of life, right? Which is where all of this begins, right? So that aspect of us is looking outside for all of the things that we have yet to learn to give to ourselves, to be the generative source of that good stuff for ourselves. And as a result, with enough time having passed, enough time in the separation, again, whether you were the one who did the discarding or they did the discarding, with enough time, we slip into codependent or abuse amnesia. That wounded inner child starts feeling real triggered, real lonely, potentially we're also going through love addiction withdrawal, which is a very real thing. We become biochemically addicted to these people and all of the chaos and the drama, as painful as it may be, believe it or not, that is a fact, right? So when we're in that place, we are wide open and susceptible. And a high spectrum destructive narcissist, or anyone whose MO is to be a toxic emotional manipulator, they are real good at letting just enough time pass. I know this from personal experience, and I see it happen with my coaching clients all the time. These people are so freaking predictable. They are nothing if not predictable, right? They will allow just enough time to pass to where you are, whether they understand all of these dynamics that I explained or not is irrelevant. That enough time passes to where you are vulnerable enough that you are likely going to be susceptible to being hoovered right back into the painful dynamic with them, right? They are master manipulators. And they know exactly what to say. And in large part because we gave them the script. All those, conversations, those circular conversations that go nowhere, where we spent all of our vital life force energy trying our darndest to communicate and be seen and be heard and be understood. We fully gave them the script, telling them what we wanted, what we needed, how we felt, why we felt what we felt. Here's my life story, all my wounding, all my trauma, and all the things that I need, all the reasons why I'm reacting to all of this toxicity and, destructive behavior, attitudes and behavior, right? So we, in our attempts to get our needs met, being very vocal, doing our darndest in a relationship where we really, if we're dirt honest with ourselves, looking back in retrospect, we can acknowledge that we probably didn't stand a chance, right? When we're dealing with people who are empathy deficient, if not fully lacking in conscience, we don't stand a hope in hell in getting our needs met, in being seen, in being in having ourselves understood in terms of our needs, our wants, our wishes, our desires, etc. Right? So we go through all of that with them in the devaluing and ultimately the discard phase. They've got the script. They know exactly what it is that we need to hear. So whatever amount of time has passed, if you're not actually in a place where you've been doing your own work and you're getting stronger and you're healing all those unhealed owies and all the, original family of origin wounding and trauma, you're going to be in a very vulnerable position where you're going to be susceptible to being emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually manipulated by someone who is running their own agenda. And their own agenda has nothing to do with showing up for you, finally getting it, finally understanding, approaching you with any sincerity, genuine apology. They'll be real good at the words, but if you've been through the abuse cycle more than once, you already know that the words are rarely, if ever, backed up with consistent, reliable, predictable behavior, right? There is rarely, if ever, a match there. They may be able to be on their best behavior in the idealization phase while you're being fully duped and fully manipulated. They may be able to keep that mask going for a period of time, usually not very long though. Usually it doesn't take very long before that mask begins to slip and you realize that you're right back to where you started, except this time your self-esteem has taken a great big huge hit again. And then this time your self-esteem has taken another great big huge hit again, and on and on and on it goes. So what do? Well, first of all, Expect it in advance. Be prepared. Know that it's coming. It's a question of time, sooner or later. I promise you, people who land on the spectrum of destructive narcissism do not just suddenly walk off into the sunset and live happily ever after with anyone. Okay, so whether they are projecting the illusion that that is the case or not is irrelevant. They aren't suddenly going to morph into an individual with empathy, a conscience, and good intentions who are actually able to sustain lasting, happy, healthy love with someone else. Okay, that's not going to happen. So no matter what sort of image they may be projecting, preferably you're oblivious to that if you're taking good care of yourself. Sometimes we're co-parenting with these people, so it's not always possible to be completely oblivious, certainly, but to the best of your ability, you need to be over in your own lane, minding your own business, taking care of you, and paying little to no attention to what's going on with them. With that said, know that it's a question of time. Sooner or later, there's likely to be some attempts at hoovering you back into that abuse cycle. And if you expect it and anticipate it and predict it and know that it's coming, it's just a matter of time, you're not going to be so vulnerable, so susceptible. Okay, so that's the first thing. Now, the other thing is you want to get clear and stay clear. And this is where having a really good support system in place. And I don't mean, you know, a bunch of friends who are going to tell you what you want to hear on any given day. I mean people who have fully walked the walk. They know what codependency and narcissistic abuse are all about, but more importantly, they're over here living in the solutions that actually work, right? So it's not just any group of friends or, you know, your auntie who will, you know, pat you on the head or pat you on the hand and again, tell you what you want to hear. When, you know, lots of well-intended people do a whole lot of damage through enabling, you know, behavior by telling us what we want to hear when we want to hear it, as opposed to what we actually need to hear when we need to hear it. So that's what I mean by having the right support system in place, whether that is in, you know, a self-help 12-step recovery program, whether that's, you know, fellowship with a good tribe of people within your, you know, spiritual community or your church, whether that's with a counselor, a coach, or a therapist, specifically specializing in these issues. There are lots of well-meaning counselors, coaches, and therapists out there who don't actually specialize in narcissistic abuse recovery. So when you're surrounding yourself with a support system, make sure it's people who actually get it, not just the problem, but the solutions that actually work. With that support system in place, you must be willing to embark on your own healing and recovery journey one way or another. And as you're doing that work, there's certainly, in particular in the early stages, going to be periods where you would be vulnerable to the narcissistic abuse of, you know, love bombing and the hoovering and all of that. But when you've got that solid support system around you, people to go to who actually get it, you're going to be far less vulnerable to getting pulled back into that dynamic. So, you know, again, healing and recovery, one way or another, the right support system, and getting clear, by the way, also includes remembering why you left to begin with. Like, that is the issue of codependent or abuse amnesia, is we often forget all the bad stuff and only remember, you know, through magical thinking, all, you know, the good stuff. And in reality, often we can really blow that out of proportion and really minimize the awful things that we have been on the receiving end of, right? So pen to paper, in a journal, make a list, write it out, exactly the details of your experience. And if you were the one who made the decision to walk away from the painful dynamic, make sure you have a list recording somewhere for you to refer back to when you get that text, that email, that phone call. They have the audacity to ring your doorbell. Lord knows that's happened to me more than once, right? And there you are, caught off guard. When that happens, you're well fortified because you actually have done the work to keep yourself out of codependent amnesia and into a place of clarity. Now, when it comes to how to respond, my personal all-time favorite is, I'm going to be honest with you, no response. Truly. No communication is communication. No communication is communication. And if you are serious about putting an end to narcissistic abuse in your life, difficult as it may be at times, especially if we are in the throes of love addiction withdrawal, if we haven't even begun our own, wounded inner child healing and recovery work, and all that goes along with codependency and narcissistic abuse recovery, if we're either new to the path or we haven't even gotten on the path, the truth is it's going to be difficult, if not downright excruciatingly painful. Your number one job is to take care of you, always. Nobody else is going to do that for you. It's up to us to take care of us, whatever it takes, right? So, the best response I can give you with regards to how to respond to narcissistic hoovering is no response at all. And the reason for that is fully the most powerful thing you can do with someone who has a history of emotionally manipulating you, psychologically abusing you on any level, right? Again, idealization, devaluation, discard. That's the abuse cycle. How much fun is that? If you've been through that once even, never mind the countless times we'll often put our hands up for it pre-recovery, right? You know full well just how excruciatingly painful that is, right? So the fastest way to get rid of anyone who lands on the spectrum of destructive narcissism, if you're serious about putting an end to the abuse, you recognize the reality that this is an individual who is constitutionally, fundamentally incapable of making the changes necessary to be able to show up for you in any real, healthy, consistent, reliable, predictable, loving, decent, kind, honoring, respectful way. If you're serious about putting an end to the abuse, you want to get rid of them. The fastest way to get rid of them is to give them nothing, zero, nada, okay? Again, no communication is communication. Chances are real good you don't owe this person anything. You don't owe this person anything. If they did the discard, you definitely have the right to close the door and never open it again. And if you're the one who made the final call and made the decision, I'm going to assume that you have already said everything that you've needed to say, probably hundreds, if not thousands of times over again. They heard you, right? They heard you. They got it all. And only now, after a period of separation, the lights are going on and suddenly they get it, and suddenly they're so sorry, and suddenly they realize how wrong they are. Like, that's a setup. That's an absolute setup. So when that phone call or that text or that email or the doorbell rings, however it happens, when they come knocking, the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. The most powerful thing you can say is nothing. And if that's too difficult for you, keep in mind, you are likely putting your hand up. You are volunteering, because it's a slippery slope. You know, you let them get their foot in the door this much, master manipulators they are. Even when they're not that bright, they are still unbelievable master manipulators, right? So if you open that door a crack, you know, it's not likely going to end well for you. So the less said, the better. If you absolutely must say something, no thank you. I'm not interested. Please do not contact me again. And then they're going to test that. And the only way to get through to them is to completely ignore them. Once they realize there's nothing to be had here in terms of a target for my bullshit games, there's nothing to be had here in terms of a dumping ground or a garbage bin for me to project all of my own dark shadow unresolved issue onto. There's nothing to be had here in terms of poking, prodding, and provoking someone into reacting, and then, being able to up all of the, high voltage, high intense emotional reaction and response, right? When they realize there's nothing to be had here, they have to go somewhere else to find another source of supply and leave you in peace so that you can continue to do your own healing and recovery work, travel down the path for yourself, learning to heal and nurture that relationship with yourself first so that you can get to a place where you're no longer so magnetically attracted to or attractive to someone who lands on the spectrum of destructive narcissism. Let me tell you, it's worth the work. It's a beautiful place to be. And with that, I'm going to call it a wrap. Friends, I sincerely hope you found this helpful today. If you liked what you heard, give me a like, drop a comment, and let me know what your biggest takeaway was. And if you're new to the channel, welcome. Thrilled to have you here. Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to be notified when I post new videos throughout the week. And again, if you like this video, you might also like this one here on the secret to identifying and managing the covert narcissist. And you can also check out this one here on successful dating after narcissistic abuse. And as I mentioned at the top of the video, we do have a few spots available in the calendar this week for the free one-to-one consult with either myself or a member of my team for the Freedom Class program. So if that's of interest to you, check out the link in the description below. There's a link where you can apply to see if you qualify for a free one-on-one consultation with us to learn more about the possibility of working with me in my 8-week transformational coaching program, the Freedom Class. And as always, I'm going to leave you with this. Know your value. Know your value and unlock your freedom. Much love. Bye for now.